Hi everyone. Welcome to WTA Live. Today will be the first episode, and it's really great to be able to share this experience with everyone here. With us today is April and Danny behind the cameras, and of course the team behind Catbalogan City Hall, Arvin, Roch, and Pauline. Today we'd like to really talk about this project, which for us is kind of like the next step in what we do as an office. We've been discussing about social architecture over the last few years, and for us, really, just to bring you all up to speed, social architecture is about creating a very hyper local spaces. It's making spaces and buildings, institutions come to us instead of us going to them. So it's about engagement. It's about bringing down barriers, creating free movement for people. It's about making public spaces that connect each of us, or each and every one of us in a community. So these are the three things that we've always been looking for in terms of social architecture. And with this project in particular, I think we move on, as we kind of like further explore our ideas as an office, and we start to think about the human environment. We start to think about who is de facto in charge of taking care of our human environment. We as architects, we always talk about our natural environment, and yet I think we are the caretakers of our built environment. And for us to be able to kind of like develop something that is more befitting human beings, something that is more livable for each and every one of us, I think we should further explore what it means to actually build a human environment. And so this project is the Catbalogan City Hall. This project is actually in the Sky City development in Catbalogan City. This will be the first project in Sky City. And so what this project does is, it is kind of like the catalyst for new growth and development in this kind of like more highland development. And Sky City, being higher in elevation, the idea here is that it's gonna be a more resilient place. It's gonna be a more resilient city, especially given that Samar, is always exposed to so many typhoons and disasters. So our idea here is that if we are gonna change how Catbaloganoans live, if we are gonna say, come on, invite them to come up to Sky City and start living here up in the mountains, what will be the main change from a coastal, fishing village, and now moving up into the highlands? What will be the change in environment? How will their daily lives change? What is it that makes this space more attractive, or at least how can we adapt this to better suit the future of Catbalogan? And so with that being said, we were looking at the program for this project, and if you look at if you come look at the boards here, the main idea really is that this is our setting. Okay, so when we went to the site, what we saw was that it was actually bare mountains, and I remember when you went there, there was slash and burn going on, and we had to think, I think in no one's living memory in that area was this ever forested. And so it started to get us thinking, how do we, say that this is a good environment? How do we change this setting? And then we thought to ourselves that this project could be a great first step, towards like doing reforestation for the mountains of Samar. Because reforestation really does two things. Of course, it helps protect, the site, the new city, and also I think it helps create a better living condition for everyone who will be going into Sky City. And then looking further, we were thinking about, okay, the program is a city hall development. What do we want to do in a city hall? And I think the first thing we had in mind was that when you're building a city hall, what you want to do is you want to build an institution that welcomes everyone. It has to be a place that people actually want to go to, because the first instinct is that a lot of our city hall buildings, it seems to exclude people. So we wanted to build a building and do architecture that's more inclusive, that invites everyone. So how we do this is by, of course, like making the city hall itself almost like a public space, right? So by opening up barriers, there are no hard walls, there are no hard segregations, but also by creating clarity or transparency in terms of how you navigate the spaces inside the building. So the first idea really was to create this sort of like central spine that allows you to say that this is the main concourse, this is the main highway when you're entering the city hall, and that you don't get lost when you're navigating the spaces because all of the spaces eventually go back into the main spine. And along this main spine, now you have, you have the public spaces where you have the courtyards, where you have the skate parks, you have a plaza. Along this public space, you have, an inner court. Along this public space or main spine, you have, a few dining spaces. Along this main spine, you will have the various forward or front-facing offices, like, the, what you call this, the LTOs, the things that people actually have interactions with or engagement with every day. And so these are the spaces along the spine, and the idea really is that by following the kind of like this slope, of the site, now you're trying to have this conversation of what it means to actually build, up in the mountains, right? How do we create a certain building that fits the terrain, that flows with the slope of the site? And so now at this stage, we are actually about to launch this project. Groundbreaking will be going on. And this is what by the time you guys see this, the project would have started, construction would be going. And so this is the scale model for the project. So this is the back portion or the edge of the Sky City property. So when you arrive into the project here, entering the city hall, you can actually enter through the plaza here and go inside the main spine. Or you can actually drop off here. There's a plaza here as well. And then you can enjoy the public spaces, the skating parks, and so one of the memories that we have of the space is that people actually hang out here to kind of like watch the sunset. And so people can actually, stay here at the back portion, look down into the valleys below, and kind of like still enjoy that view as a public space. But they can also meander up. They can meander up towards this like green roof where I can actually see all the way to the waters. And so that's kind of like the beauty of this project is that right now what we're doing is we're kind of like creating two fronts for the building, right? And actually you're even developing this third front or third facade, which actually becomes the most important facade of the building, which is the top portion of this building. This becomes the most active space in the entire development. And today we're about to discuss the main point of this whole project, which is how we go about the reforestation program. This project, at least for us, is just kind of like an initiation. It's a first step, towards a much bigger program that we want to start. And for us, architects or architecture does not end after the construction ends, but rather it has to be kind of like a longer life cycle. And this is just the beginning towards kind of like reforesting a bigger and bigger portion of Catbalogan or Samar, and hopefully reintroducing this idea of living in our forests and what it means to be living in a tropical country where, you can enjoy nature every day. So on March 9th, instead of the typical groundbreaking work where you have golden shovels, we are proposing that why not plant some trees, Why not start the reforestation program? Since if you look at the site, this site actually sprawls and goes on up into the mountains. And so I think even during the, construction stage, we can already start with this reforestation program. And we wanted to, engage with the local authorities, local experts, see what we can actually figure out and how we can develop, this secondary forest, how we can develop, the flora and fauna that can fit a forest city. And so Arvin here has been, coordinating with the local authorities, the LGUs, and they've been trying to figure out, well, firstly, where to start. So, and we're saying that this area here is where we will be doing the groundbreaking. So I think there's gonna be a small outdoor space there. Is that a bookstop?
Yeah. So, well, in the future, it will be a pavilion where everyone can hold any program.
Mm-hmm.
So for the groundbreaking ceremony, our stage will be here. Then all of the trees are surrounded. It's like the seed. It's basically what we're doing with the city hall. The city hall represents as a symbol for like a new growth. So this space will be the start of the new growth of our forest. So it kind of expands to the nature. to the forest that currently doesn't have any trees right now. So this will be our stage, and then all of the trees that represents the people of Catbalogan are the designers, the contractors will have one tree to plant in the ceremony.
So I think we're trying to come up with, a new kind of public space, meaning instead of having, just a lawn park, or let's say, for example, having a plaza, or a rotunda, we want to sort of like create, this forest space or forest park itself. And then eventually the forest park becomes your access point towards a much bigger forest, right? And the idea here is that we need to figure out, I think, what are these fingers that grow up into the mountain, right? I think it cannot just be like we just plant in a grid pattern or whatever. I think we also marshal our resources to be able to create density, right? Because how a forest grows is that you actually can see that it will, of course, grow naturally outwards, right? So I think if we actually spread fingers that grow up, then it can, grow together. And that eventually shortens the growth period of this entire forest. Instead of like having, let's say, everything in front, maybe we can do fingers that actually grow up into the mountain. Because that's what allows you to kind of like hasten its own natural growth, not just, things we plant, right? That being said, that's like kind of like a longer term thing, right? But our first job really is to figure out that plan, right? You need to map that out, like where do we plant the trees? So we don't just do a grid pattern and say every how many meters you plant one tree, right? You want them to kind of like cluster together so that they form kind of like also nicer visual background, really, how the forest goes. And I think it also needs to be said that how the forest grows needs to be able to kind of like describe how this reservoir is. We're building a stormwater reservoir in the site, in the idea that we can actually retain, runoff and be able to use this gray water to, water the plants for the use of the city hall itself, and also to kind of like biologically filter anything before it goes down the mountain. So I think that has to be part of the reforestation program. I think the reservoir needs to be an important part of this, and so we need to figure out how that can be incorporated better into the reforestation. So it's not just about planting trees. We're also talking about planting, plants that can help clear the water, that can help clear mercury, other metals. I think irises can help with that. So they're like plants that can actually do that. The hardy plants that can actually survive without much maintenance. And so we need to start identifying what trees we actually want to use. Like, have they given us suggestions on what to use? Because earlier you mentioned we're going to be planting toogs, right? But toogs are not endemic to Samar, if I'm not mistaken. They're actually endemic to Mindanao. And so we need to say why is there not any alternative available for us to plant, right? Because we also don't want it to be a monocrop. We want there to be a variety of trees, right? And especially for this first instance where we're actually planting the main plaza. So you have to remember that what we're doing next week is not actually the main forest itself, right? This is a forest park, and this is kind of like almost like a forested plaza. And what we're saying is that we're gonna plant toog there, but toog is not native to Samar. So how does it properly represent Samar, right? I think it should be something, that kind of like, if people don't remember these mountains being forested, still we want to bring back that kind of like collective memory, right? I always feel like, Samar is such an important forested island, in the Philippines. It's one of the biggest islands, and it has one of the biggest, virgin forests still left, right? Next to Mindanao and Palawan, most likely. So I think it's important for us to bring back that memory in the city, because Samar is still heavily forested, right? Outside the city, the mountains are still forested. That's why they're still slashing and burning their way. But if we want to stop that, we have to create a certain amount of awareness with the people, right? We want them to actually kind of like say they can live with the forest, right? And then I'm sure the advantages of living there can trickle down, can be translated into their daily lives. But that being said, so we should not be planting trees that are not
And then-
native. Right? Because if we plant the oaks, they can appreciate the oak so much that they start chopping up all the other trees and planting the oak. Right? It's like, it's like planting folcatas in Mindanao or planting rubber trees, right? And I think that should not be the main goal, especially for this project, because this project is not an agro-industrial project, right? The main goal is reforestation. The main goal is about creating a better living environment. And so it's not about what trees can be, forest crops or turn into forestry products. That should not be the number one goal. And so we should look for alternatives. Right? And also, I think the oak is a slower growing. We should try to plant softwood because hardwoods grow slower. So if there's available softwoods, or whatever is a hardier tree, that's what we should be looking for. Trees that are more resistant to typhoons. I don't know. Agoho is, but I'm not sure if agoho can be something that's planted up in the mountain. That's usually by the coast kasi. But like an agoho will sway whatever with the wind, right? And for all intents and purposes, maybe we plant bamboo, right? But bamboo cannot be planted there because bamboo has to be planted in a creek or whatever waterway, because bamboo needs water. It feeds heavily on water, right? But it would help, further down if we have runoff.
This actually is our runoff area. It's
Right.
like a creek.
So beyond going down, maybe that's where we can see where the bamboo goes. But I'm almost sure it's already there. I'm almost sure that there is already bamboo growing there or something. Because the bamboo just grows everywhere, right? But I think the first stage is we need to choose carefully what trees we want to plant. So the first thing, this like rotunda of trees. Okay, these can be big, strong trees, right? Whatever, it can be Nara, for what I know, right? But there are trees that can be, that can be a showcase that can represent, what we want. But definitely these are spaced too closely together for trees. I think
This is currently 6 meters.
that's 6 now.
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay then. 6 meters is okay. So we're doing 6 meter spacing for trees. Okay, that first crop of trees can work, but we have to. I don't think Toog is the best representation of Samar. Diba? Tell them to get trees that represent Samar, not trees that are just trees for the sake of being trees.
It's available.
Hindi naman, I don't think that's what we want.
Yeah.
But then I think also looking into that, we have to figure out what kind of trees actually penetrate our site itself. Right? We should start choosing, what trees can actually penetrate the site and how they can be kind of like a secondary grid network. That if we can actually lead things inwards, then that's something that can be interesting also, right? So let's say you have bird song, you have birds. Then they can actually come inside, they can fly in, there's something for them to actually, you have bees, you have, butterflies, because Samar is so rich in terms of the fauna.
Yeah.
So I think there's eagles in Samar, right? So they just told us there's eagles in Samar right now. So I think that's something that we can actually pursue. And like we said, this top portion of the new city hall anyway is kind of like almost the main facade of it, right? That is really what we're trying to develop. Especially for a site that actually goes towards the back largely. I think that's really important that we see how we can make it come alive, Because the fear is that it doesn't come alive. I think that would be our main concern, na parang if it doesn't start, growing, at least the top portion, then it might not become as interesting, right? You can put all the greens you want, all the passageways, but if people don't start coming there to enjoy it, diba? So if you have, at least you have, a bit of nature, you have more life in it, then that kind of like alleviates, even if the uptake is slower, then there's already life in it, right? It becomes a bit more valuable, as an environment for everyone. And also for the people in City Hall. At least it's somewhere nice for them to be in. And I think, because the good thing about this project is that City Hall will always be populated, right? Every day people are going there for work, whatever, for their needs. And so we're really introducing them to something different, right? It's like almost saying like this is maybe better or not, but it's good, right? To say that it's better than what they're used to, we don't know. But definitely it's a good way of living. It's a good environment. And then the idea is that hopefully it dictates how the rest of Sky City develops, right? Because everything's blank anyway right now.
Yeah.
So if this works, then of course they, become, and like they have more incentive to do it the same way, right? So I think that's one. And so we need to figure out, actually, you need to count how many trees we're planting. How many trees are we planting? How many trees do we expect to plant? What's the extent of the site? Right? And then the timeline, right? You have trees, for example, let's say you plant the fast growing trees first, then the slower, longer living trees next, right? I mean, what is the interval, right? And then you're gonna need intercropping. You don't want, I mean, I'm sure there's a whole ecosystem of trees that kind of like, they need each other, right?
Symbiotic living.
Symbiotic, right? So we cannot just say these are the three. Okay, let's say we have 5 trees that we want to plant, but then do those 5 trees fit together? Diba? Yun yung hinihingi ko sa inyo.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I want to see. And God forbid we start planting coconut trees here. Why are we planting coconut trees? I mean, that's the last thing I want to plant, right? We don't want coconut trees here. I don't think that's what you want. That reflects a forest properly. Coconuts by the beach, I don't care, but not up in the mountains probably. So, we need to come up with the list. So when we get there, that's what you need to really kind of like coordinate with them to let them know that we're not here to do tree planting.
Yeah.
We're here to do reforestation. It's not the same, right? So there needs to be an understanding that we're trying to build an ecosystem, not just plant trees. If they grow, they grow. If not, yeah, diba? And are they trees that will survive, the storms, the typhoons? Are they trees that will survive drought? Right? I mean, if nobody waters during the summer, what happens to the dry season? No one's gonna water up the mountains, right? So they have to be trees that can actually survive, right? And then also, what soil do you use to plant those trees in? You cannot just plant them in the ground. That's it, right? You have to add. I mean, at least for the initial, you need to support them.
So we're planning to put the original soil first, then mixing it to what we have on site so that they can adapt for the first.
What do you mean original soil from the nursery?
Yeah, from the nursery. So they're bringing in soil, original soil they grew up with.
It's usually IPA. The nurseries are always using IPA for their, but I don't think it holds. That's the problem with IPA. It will get pulled out easily, right? So you have to stake them or something. We have to stake them to the ground, definitely. That's one thing. And we have to really look at how it can be, better watered.
Yeah.
Because it's a dry season now, right? It's not going to start raining the next 3 months. So who's going to be watering those trees, right? So that's something. If we have to build dig up a small channel to at least collect water from somewhere, we should look into that as well. As something that can be. Baka we can build mga swales. Yung swales are like gullies, right?
Yeah,
that you can cut into the ground, and that's why I'm like we're looking at doing fingers also, right? Because I think you're really gonna need to look at how this is gonna be watered for the first few months or first year even. After a year, we're done. So the tree just needs to get through fall, right? The bare months. After they get through the bare months, they're good na. The roots grow. The roots grow during the bare months. That's like basically August, September, October. That's when the roots actually grow. Once they get through that period, then of course winter they're slow. They're okay na. Because you're replanting the trees. They're not grown there on site, diba? So we need for them to get through that period at least. So we need to have a program for that. Hindi lang program of what to plant. But how do you actually take care? Who takes care of it? Do we get volunteers from the SK?
They have the team already for the reforestation.
So who's the reforestation team made of?
It's headed by Miss Jonna from City Hall. Then a couple of groups like youth
Oh,
And
so the
they're-
SK.
Yeah.
And
And then they have a team in the city hall that actually the environmental planning will help.
the environmental officer.
Yes.
I thought we were reaching out to Xi'an or someone. You know, those cities in China. I think Xi'an is a sister city of Catbalogan, right? And we're saying that we're reaching out to them to help us come up with a reforestation program because they're sister cities, right? And I think they have that because they've been trying to reforest the desert over there, right? So I think they might have something to share with us for that. In terms of like what is a faster growing drought resistant tree. That's your problem now. You need a more drought resistant tree. So I'm not sure if Toog is it. But at least initially, while you don't have that, you need more drought resistant trees. So those are some things that you need to go through. But anyway, what else do we have?
For the bigger scale, I mean, of course, we're gonna start here. But what if we try to talk with the developers of the Sky City and then
But this is outside Sky City already.
that is outside Sky City.
Yeah.
But for the development of the whole Sky City, what if we talk to the developer if we can actually apply this concept to
Every single part of
using that thinking so that people can actually
Yeah, why not? We can
learn
talk to them.
from Sky City, not just our city hall.
We can talk to them. Whether they listen or not is
Yeah.
another thing, right? I mean, yes. But my main concern is not that. I think that is, like trying to think about, maybe we can change how Sky City is. I think that's us, architects speaking. Because our ego is that we look at the Sky City as something, but this is a bigger plot. The mountains are bigger. So why are we worried about whatever the extent of Sky City is when you have much bigger mountains at the back? When that's what you should be looking at, reforesting, right? You're looking at reforestation, right? So like I said, how Sky City develops, this will dictate that because when they see how this works, then they can, we can start engaging with them. I think we can start trying to figure out what urban spaces or amenities we can actually insert inside the city itself. But our main goal of reforestation is not to reforest Sky City. Right? Reforestation is about here, the mountains at the back, not the city in front. So I think that's one. But if we can actually come up, with a master plan for Sky City, why not, right? We can engage with them, start talking about trying to come up with a better master plan than what they actually have right now, which is just kind of like
Commercial.
it's not even a plan really. It's just a zoning plan. But yeah, we can talk to them. Why not? Escanio, right?
Yeah.
We'll start talking to them and see how it goes. But I think it will all depend on this one. Right? If this works, then it works.
They're gonna see this. This is
Yeah.
really significant.
Yeah, they'll see how it works, and then that will allow us to. What's our timeline right now in terms of like the phasing? We're going with phase 1 and phase 2 at the same time, right?
They canceled phase 2 first since the time and the budget it's not already out. Yeah, so we're focusing on phase 1. So we're building the shell of the 3 floors and
Okay.
this up to here.
Okay.
Then phase 2 will
This will
be
be phase 2.
Yeah, this is phase 2. Then the phase 3, the planning for the phase 3 is everything that's to complete.
Okay. So phase 1 and phase 2 will be the main structure, and then phase 3 is more of like the finishing,
And the last
landscaping.
floor.
Yeah, and the last floor.
Yes.
And I think we can also engage with, I think, a lot of like environmental donors about, the biological filter, the reservoir. I think that's something that can, the UN can help with, ADB can help with. I'm sure we can get, outside help for that. And also technical expertise. I think the Germans did something for Sorsogon before. We can reach out to them, the German government or the Dutch government even. Of course, we just push the city themselves to officially, reach out. But I think that's something that they can help with. So yeah, and then I think that being said, we're gonna be doing groundbreaking next week, and the hope really is that, in our next session for WTA Lives, what we can do is we can actually have more people join us. We can get your thoughts. For us, really, this is a living project. And hopefully it will evolve, as we start, hearing more ideas and start talking to everyone. And we can slowly insert programs, for example, like let's say a skate park, a small library that can actually benefit Catbalogan better. And so thanks for joining us. See you again soon.